Okay, in this video, I want to show you how to adjust your rags. So, by way of review, what is a rag? A rag is in a flush left paragraph, the rag is the way that the right lines fall before the return. Okay, so we can see right here, this is indicative of flush left, rag right. So is this. Other justified settings would not include a right rag. Both sides would be flush, and flush right, rag left would show a flush line on the right side, and then your rags would be on the left. Okay, now as we can see, this is showing as bad rag. Why? Now this is one of the things you want to check for when you're starting to establish your rags and to adjust your rags. So you take a look at the distance between the longest and the shortest lines. Okay, and if that's a vast, drastic difference, that is definitely indicative of needing adjustments. Another area that you want to, a problematic area is it's not shown here. This is displaying differences in the lengths of lines as being too drastic. A couple other things you want to watch for are any kind of wavy patterns like this, where your rags would do something like that, or inverted like that. Okay, those are all indicative of areas that would need adjusting. This side right here is showing good rag, and as we can see, the rags are much, much more even. Technically, great rags would look like long line, short line, in a way that they're kind of staggered, but not noticeable. Do you see what I'm saying? You don't want you don't want to try to make them any more even than this, because then they could be mistaken for bad set justified type. Do you see what I'm saying? Rags are a good thing. They just need to be a little bit more even than what we see right here. So how do we adjust our rags? Well, let's do this. Let's jump right over to InDesign. And I've got this file open in InDesign right here. And we can see that we've got 4 columns of type set up here. And we see some rags that need to be adjusted. So what do? The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to come down here to our paragraph. Now note I've got my character panel open and I've got my paragraph panel open. So the first thing, I want to show you a few settings that you want to make sure that you have set. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my type tool and I'm just going to place my cursor in that type selection. I'm going to hit Command A. Sorry, what that's going to do is that is going to select all of the type. Okay. Now, what we could do from here is this: is once the type is selected, I want to come to my paragraph panel and I want to come to this flyout menu right here. I want to make sure there's a few adjustments that are definite, a few settings that are checked. Okay, so let's do this. Come over here. You want to make sure Adobe Paragraph Composer is checked. All right, you want to come down here, make sure balanced ragged lines is checked. Okay, at that point, you want to come down here and come to your hyphenation box. We'll click that to open up the hyphenation settings dialog box, and you want to uncheck that, okay? That's where I start when I'm looking at my rags. Now, if your rags aren't behaving, you can come back in this hyphenation setting, click hyphen, so you want to click activate hyphenation and work with the parameters here and also work with the slider. Okay, so as you're starting to see, adjusting rags is not a one-click fix. There's several things that are variable factors that come into consideration here. So we set these up as such, okay? And what you can do when you're working with hyphenation, if your rags aren't behaving, is make sure that you click your preview window so you can see changes on the fly. I'm not going to demonstrate that right now, but I do highly recommend you set some type, get in here and start experimenting. Let's just say okay there. All right, now at this point, we can start adjusting the reg. So we can do what's called a soft return, and this is where I always start. I always start with the soft return. So what we're going to do is come in here, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so we can see. Now I want you to notice something. So I'm going to try this word "the" right here. These regs look pretty good, okay? Not bad at all. So what I want to do is I want to come here. This line right here is a little long and it's bugging me. So I want to drop that word to the next line and see if that fixes anything. So to do that, what I want you to make sure that you pay attention to the rest of the type. And what you're looking for is less than stellar results, okay? So just moving this is not going to just affect that word. It's going to affect the rest of the type associated with that paragraph. Let me show you what I mean. So if I come in here and watch the rest of the paragraph, but I'm going to do a soft return right here. And soft return simply means you hold your shift key down and hit the return key. So right now, I'm going to hold my shift key down. Okay, and if you see, these rags look great now, but we come over here and look how short these lines are. So that's not a great result. So I'm going to Command Z that. Okay, I'll show you how to fix that in 1 second. So what you would do is go through your whole selection here and just find areas where you can use soft returns to improve your regs. Let me show you a couple of more examples. Okay, this word the, let's try a soft return there. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, beautiful. Look, that's gorgeous. That worked beautifully. Let's jump over here, and there's another area there's a word right here, and it's kind of bugging me a little bit, so let's soft return that. Boy, I don't know. I think it was better before, so we'll Command Z that and leave that. Okay, now the next thing that you can do is come in here and remember this word, the, that we tried to adjust, and it kind of messed up the rest of the formatting. Let me show you what you can do there. Got my character panel out, and what we're going to do here is we're going to select that whole line. And at this point, you guessed it, we're going to go right in there and track that down. So let's go to our tracking. Look at that. That's beautiful results right there. So as you can see, adjusting your rags is not a one-click fix. It's a matter of several settings working in concert. There's so many variables at play here that there's several things working together. So we have to try different settings. We have to try different things to see what works and what doesn't. So I showed you how to track down. Let me show you how to track up. So at this point, let's find a short line. This line right here. Let's go ahead and track that up. Let's just go ahead and not bad, right? Even better, looking great. Now note I'm very careful about tracking up and tracking down because you don't want to track this to the point where it's noticeable. Okay, adjusting rags is a very subtle art, so you don't want it to be noticeable. All right, let me show you another technique. Another technique is that you can actually come in here and adjust the actual widths of the text boxes. So let's say you have some rags that you just aren't behaving. So we select that type and we just come in here and just nudge that in a little bit. And see how it just readjusted all the rags? So that's another technique that you can try. Now, again, I just want to reiterate at this point, whenever you're adjusting your rags, make sure you see what's going on in the rest of the paragraph. So I've shown you several techniques. I've shown you these global techniques and settings. Now, it's interesting to note that these settings, sorry about that. These settings that we have in our paragraph settings, justification, these things that I have selected, these all can be worked right into your, let me grab my type tool here so we can see those a little bit. Not real sure why that is not active at this point. At any rate, so there we go. Sorry about that. I didn't have my cursor in my type. So we've got our Adobe Paragraph Composer, a balanced right rags, and our hyphenation turned off. That's where you start. Interesting to note, these can all be set up right in your paragraph styles, which is super convenient. At that point, I've shown you how to come in and soft return to force individual words to the next line. I've also shown you how to adjust the width of your text boxes to adjust rags. A couple other techniques. Another thing that you can do is you can select a different typeface, select a different different size of the typeface, different point size, and you can also edit your type. And all of these things, as you can see, all of these things can work in concert with one another to adjust your rags. So again, just want to reinforce, adjusting rags is kind of tedious, but it really separates the professionals from the amateurs, and it will be noticed by portfolio reviewers and, more importantly, by potential hiring professionals when that time comes. So at this point, I highly, highly recommend that you set up some type and start experimenting. Once you kind of get the lay of land a little bit and you're starting to get comfortable with these settings and these different techniques I've shown you, then you can go into a piece of your design work and start adjusting your regs therein. Okay, so those are the techniques, and at this point, if you have any questions at all, please let me know. I'll be glad to clarify anything that in that regard. Okay, thanks everybody.